Guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we'll be testing out some vintage lenses on the Arri Alexa Mini. Yes, so we recently got an opportunity to go try out some lenses, and one of my buddies loves vintage lenses. Me, I'm anti-vintage. I'm more into the modern era, so without wasting much time, let's get into it. So the first lens we got to test was the B&L Super Baltar's 18mm. You can see already. So one of the things that people like about vintage lenses, they say they have character, that's the thing that people like about them. And this is, for a lot of us who grew up like in the 2000s and 90s, this is what we grew up watching, right? So this is the lenses that we used, and they sort of defined what cinematic was for us. And I think a lot of people relate to that, and a lot of people love this type of lenses. For me, I like the digital because I grew up playing games. I grew up playing video games, so I like that clear digital texture, I think that with this lens, for me, it's always about the skin tones and then the blacks as well. Like if you just look at that, the focus breathing is crazy though. Like I think that's the one challenge you have with these vintage lenses. I think you have to have that old school. You have to have that old school, not mentality, but like type of skill to be able to do it fast, but also understand what the lens requires, because you have to adapt yourself to the lens. And this is the B&L Super Baltar's 35mm. One thing I like about the 35 is just this is the closest. So the human eye, they say it's between the 35 to the 50, so around 40. Like how we perceive the world. For me, whenever I'm shooting, it's always about the perspective of the audience. I want the audience to feel as if we're there, That's what I think is a great cinematic experience. So for me, I often opt for the 35mm. If it's not there, I go for the 40, and then if push comes to shove, 50. But essentially that 35-40 range is where I'm at, and you can see how the frame is more compressed and how much you can control that frame that you have. And here we have a close-up with the same lens, and then you can see. So you find that a lot of times when you like that bokeh, when you like that feeling that people love, like of making the background disappear, the closer the lens is, the depth of field, it helps you there, because the camera then focuses on what's here. Whereas if, like right now, how I'm seated, if I wanted to create the bokeh behind me, it's almost hard because the camera is further away. Like right now I'm shooting on a 50, but then the camera is a little bit distance away, so what is in focus, then the depth of field becomes quite large, and also just depending on the lighting you have as well. But that's the one thing that I think people love about these lenses. For me, it's always about, look at the skin tones, how is it doing, how are the blacks black, and just look at what it's doing to the lights behind him, how majestic and beautiful that is. And then now we have those Super Baltar's B&L at 50mm. The frame is quite shrunk as well. I think with this, once again, like it's just preference in terms of which focal length that you prefer to use, to be honest, Close-ups on a 50 is my go-to, because that's why I'm even shooting on one right now. The space you have to shape the frame on a 50 compared to a 35, because with a 35, if you bring it closer, it's more naturalistic. But I think if you're going for that portrait, like 85, 50, you get that beautiful picture look. Whereas if you're going for that realistic, I think the wider you go, the better you have of creating that natural human feel. Because the thing is, as humans, our eyes don't switch. So we don't switch in focal length. What switches is distance, right? So like when you get closer to somebody, they are close to you, but you can still see the wide frame in front of you, right? Compared to these lenses, where then it becomes more artistic. So it's more of a choice. Once again, look at the bokeh, what's happening behind him. Like that's what makes these lenses special. And then the masters, I think when we speak about vintage lenses that everybody talks about, is the Zeiss Super Speeds. And they're called Super Speeds mainly because they're fast. They have a fast aperture. So I think they open up to T1 or something like that. That's what makes them be called the Super Speeds, because I think back in the day, they didn't have that technology. Whereas now, like, you have lenses that go down as much as 0.9. Once again, I think the thing that people really like about these things is just the texture and the Zeiss glass that they were making back in the day. and how colors react, how everything is just clear and beautiful. This lens has been used in a lot of movies, especially from back in the day. For me, Zeiss is my favorite lens company. I'm in love with the Supreme Primes, which are more modern, which have modern glass, and they don't really have a character to them. But one of the reasons I like that is I get to add my own technical flair. I get to add my own artistic expression on them. Whereas with this, I think people who prefer vintage lenses are people whom they have an idea. So like if you're painting, right? Some people would prefer having a rough paper and then having to paint in those crevices and create patterns. And then some people just like that smooth paper that we or like painting. Think about it as like, those boards that you can write and erase on, how glossy they are. Some people just prefer that. And it's more preference than it is anything really. Because with this, you don't really control the textures, whereas with modern lenses, I feel like you get to do that. So this is a super speed at 35. Once again, like just look at the colors, look at everything. I think the most important thing when it comes to anything when you're doing a lens test is how do different colors react. So like if you're shooting tungsten, right now my lights I think I've set them to like 4.1, but if you're doing 3.2 and whatever, you want to see how the skin reacts. You want to see how the body, like the colors of the person, the fabric, how it reacts. I once asked the production designer, like, is there a way of knowing how different fabrics react to different lights? And they're like, if somebody wrote a book about that, please send it to me. But I think for me, it's very important to have that understanding of how light and the material in front of it react in terms of what the camera captures, The bokeh, man, like I think that's one thing that these lenses have that's pretty much the money. Like, look at what they're doing behind them and what you can do with this. There's a shot that I like doing where we have a place here that's outside and you get to see the street. So like when cars are in traffic and you have these lights just lined down, and then if you're able to have this, create this motion or create this blurriness, it'll be a beautiful thing. This is something that I can see in a dreamy, romantic type of scene when you have that vintage look. For me, this is the lens that I grew up on, the Cooke S4 Mini. Like they create a different vibe. I grew up on these things, man. Like a lot of movies that we watched growing up, they have the Cooke look. And, one thing about Cookes that I've been told is they get perfect skin tones and screw everything else. So imagine just going, hey man, we got the perfect skin tones, but whatever. But they are very good for those romantic scenes. I think they really capture drama pretty well. Like in my experience from this test, like they don't really give you the bokehs we're getting as dramatic as in the other ones, but like how they create that dreamy atmosphere behind them. That's what makes these things phenomenal. The 50, once again, man, look at that. Look at that. Like, it just creates a beautiful portraiture type of photo. And then it's all about your framing and what you want to do with it. I think, obviously the camera is doing its thing. These are Alexa colors, so, but everything is insane. Like, you just need to combine a good lens with a good camera. And then these are the Leica R Primes. These are also vintage, So for me, before we did this test, I didn't know much about the Leicas. Like every time I ever heard about a Leica, it was always in terms of the camera, like those super expensive cameras. So when I got to see this lens, I was like, yo, what are we doing, man? What are we doing? The way they capture the blacks, the way they do the skin tones, like it's ridiculous. One thing is always look at what it's doing to the bokeh. So imagine if you're doing a rec focus, if you're doing stuff like that, like you get an amazing image. And yeah, look at this. Look at the lights behind him. Look at the flicker. Look at everything. Like you're just able to separate your subject from the background, which is beyond amazing. And then you can be creative as much as you want. So that's pretty much it. In conclusion, like I always say, and I think this is something a lot of people speak about when they say gear doesn't matter. Like, it's all about the story. But I think one thing that happens when it comes to camera, it's more of gear doesn't matter, but gear also plays a role in terms of how creative you can be, in terms of the things that you can do. And you tend to see that you get what you pay for. Like, a lot of people do amazing work with less, but if you have more, go for it, man. Like, invest every dollar that you can into the image. It will make you different. It will pay you off, just in terms of the quality of picture that you have. A lot of people are fans of vintage lenses. I'm not really. Like, I don't think I've been impressed as much as when I ran into a Zeiss Supreme Prime lens. Like, that was a lens where I was like, whoa, this is beautiful, but everybody has preference, everybody has different taste, and we're all allowed to have our different opinions. In terms of Alexa, I put my hands up. Let me know which one of these lenses is your favorite. Which one have you used? What do you think? Is it worth it renting out lenses to create a picture and stuff like that? I'll see you in the next one.